which is the Regional Transmission Coordination Task Force on September 23rd, 2025 at 1 p.m. Below is the agenda of the items scheduled to be considered. At the chair's discretion, 2 or more agenda items may be combined for consideration, removed, or discussion may be delayed relating to the item at any time. Unless otherwise stated, items may be taken out of order and presented on the agenda at the discretion of the chairperson. Members of the public who are disabled and require accommodations or assistance at the meeting are requested to notify the Governor's Office of Energy in writing or by calling 775-434-4720. Please notify me, Antonia Caprelli, at the Governor's Office of Energy at 775-634-5440 or at a.capparelli@energy.mv.gov if you'd like to request a written copy of the notice sent to you or to request supporting materials at no charge. All supporting material is available to the public at 600 East William Street, Suite 200, Carson City, Nevada 89701, or at https://energy.mv.gov/rtctf/. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes per person at the discretion of the chairperson. So with that being said, we're moving forward with the roll call. Jennifer Taylor?
Present.
David Rubin?
Present.
Robbie Hamlin?
Present.
Gail Bates?
Present.
Luke Papayas?
Present.
Richard Perkins?
Here.
Kayla Doughty? Elise Porto? Louise Cruz?
Present.
Eric Henson?
Present.
Jeremy Newman? Dwayne McClinton? Tom Burns? Henry Shields?
I'm here.
Leslie Mukana?
Mujica.
Mojica, thank you. Present?
Present.
Nicola Christensen?
Present.
Haley Williamson?
Here.
Michael Robinson?
Robertson, I'm present.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have met quorum.
Great. Thank you so much, Antonia.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome back, members of the task force to our first 2025 meeting, and welcome to new members, including Gail, Robbie, Michael, Nick. Looking forward to being able to work with you all. Today, we're just going to kind of do another sort of foundational meeting where we get updates on everything that's been going on in the West. And there has, again, been a lot between the Pathways Initiative, bills passing in California, work from SPP and RAP. Great, Elise. And then, you know, what's coming next out of Pathways and out of SPP and out of our resource adequacy programs here in the West. So I will just take this opportunity to again say thank you to our speakers for dedicating the time to put together presentations and to spend time with us here today. And I will pass it over to Michael O'Brien, who is the Senior Policy and Engagement Manager at WPP and RAP, so that he can give us an update on the work being done for the Resource Adequacy Program here in the West.
Thank you, Jennifer. For the record, I'm Michael O'Brien. I am the Senior Policy and Engagement Manager for the Western Resource Adequacy Program at the Western Power Pool, WPP. And we're really grateful for this opportunity to provide another update on the RAP to this task force. We spoke last time in June 2024. And as Jennifer said, a lot has happened since then. I know many of you are familiar with WPP's regional RA program, some maybe less so, but I'll briefly level set with a couple of quick reminders about the core aspects of the program and its components. Then I'll move on to a discussion about the status of the RAP in terms of it going binding and what has been happening over the last year or so in terms of key decisions and changes. So the program is currently in a non-binding status. So there are no charges for any compliance failures, but all other parts of the tariff are in place. So while I can't share any metrics or results with you, we can talk generally about the experience of participants, as well as what the program is working towards and how it is evolving. So in the next slide, please. So the Western Power Pool generally, as the Northwest Power Pool, has been around for many decades. And we have programs on reserve sharing and frequency sharing, along with WestTech and Endeavour looking into transmission planning coordination. But I'm here today just to focus on the RAP. So a reminder that the RAP is voluntary to join. It's a resource adequacy program, but there are compliance requirements if you are a member. And if you're in Markets Plus, it is a requirement that you are in good standing in the RAP. So RAP participants are what we call load responsible entities, or LREs. And this is a broad and flexible term meant to capture not just utilities, whether investor or public owned, but also federal power marketing agencies like Bonneville, and entities that might provide retail choice. So the program can be thought about in terms of these two time horizons. You might remember the planning piece and the operations piece. And part of the value proposition at its core is that by planning together, collectively, we should need lower planning reserve margins. And that's the extra capacity held in addition to the forecasted average load to maintain a certain acceptable level of reliability. So in the operations program time horizon, that's when is more real time and participants can access each other's pooled capacity and operationally realize those diversity benefits that were captured during the planning stage. So the next slide, please. So a little more detail about the value proposition and how that ties to binding. So the value proposition is really captured when participants show up in a binding way for the planning component of the RAP. It's what we call the forward showing. So what does that mean? It means participants are obligated to show up with enough capacity to satisfy the program's reliability metrics. And it's those metrics that should be sending the correct market signals for the necessary capacity to get built. Then in the operations program, the binding piece of it, that means that participants are obligated to show up for each other when they're called upon to help. So in addition to the binding forcing factor in the forward showing and the ops program, the other key pieces of the value proposition are that we are working together, that we have a shared set of analytically derived reliability metrics. And at a high level, what we're doing is setting monthly planning reserve margins during these binding seasons of summer and winter. So summer for this program runs through June through mid-September, and winter runs November through March. So the idea being, and this is the final point here, that the program is leveraging all of that load and resource diversity to achieve reliability more efficiently. So the next slide, please. I think you should be a map. There we go. So this shows the current RAP participation in black, along with additional WPP programs in yellow. So it can be seen that the RAP is serving the majority of the Western Interconnect outside of California. We do need to update this slide. It is with our graphics department, as we have onboarded Tucson Electric and Constellation over the last few months, and their RAP agreements, what we call wrappers, they came into effect on September the 15th. So next slide, please. That was just a quick one. So we're just going to spend a couple more minutes on the core components of the program so we can understand what has changed. So we have the forward showing piece on the top and the operations program on the bottom. It's important to note that the RAP footprint as a whole is currently split into two subregions, the Northwest and the Southwest. Participants are either in one or the other. So in terms of the forward showing, initially we have this determination of the capacity requirement, and that's determined through a loss of load expectation study, an LOLE study. And that means is we look at all the resources and all the loads that participants have turned in advance, and then analytically, we determine the extra capacity that's needed to meet the program's 1 in 10 reliability metric. And then that is allocated out to each participant as a monthly PRM. And there's a different sets of PRMs for the different subregions. But within a subregion, all the participants have the same planning reserve margin. And then the next box at the top is we need to determine how our participants' resources contribute capacity to meeting their load and their planning reserve margin. We do that through what we call a qualifying capacity study, just one more acronym, QCC. But what it really is about is the capacity value of those resources. What firm capacity are they bringing to the system? And we have different methodologies for different resources, such as thermal, wind, or solar. Then the last block at the top is...
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi there.
Gina, it sounds like you somehow have access to the meeting. I haven't heard anything else. They were just talking about RAP, I think.
Yes.
Should I pause for a moment?
Sure, please.
Just say when.
Yeah, I think we're good. I'll just...
Okay, thank you. So that last block at the top, that's when participants turn in their stacked portfolio of resources that show how they are trying to meet or meeting their monthly forward showing capacity requirements. As a reminder, that's a forecasted P50 peak load for each month plus the PRM on top. And that forward showing occurs 7 months ahead of the beginning of that winter or summer season. So for summer, 7 months ahead of the beginning of June is the end of October the previous year. And for winter, 7 months ahead of November 1st is the end of May the same year. So those portfolios, that forward showing is then reviewed to see if they brought adequate capacity. That could either be owned resources or contracts or demand response programs to see if they've met those forward showing requirements. And there's also a forward showing transmission requirement for each month as well. And when the RAP is binding, there will be non-compliance charges associated with not meeting those. But these charges are phased. They're going to be ramped in as the program becomes binding. And then quickly along the bottom, the operations program. So instead of the forward showing ahead of a season, this runs during those seasons. And it's fundamentally about matching up those in deficit with those in surplus. So things can obviously change between that forward showing planning period and the actual weeks and days and hours leading up to an operational day. So the initial phase of the ops program compares those forward showing expectations, how you expected your load to be, how you expected your resources to perform, what forced outages you're expecting, to what is actually happening on the operational reality. And that delta is basically the sharing calculation. So that process, it determines who should have surplus capacity and who is deficient. And then we can match up those that are short with those that are long. And if a surplus participant is matched with a deficient participant and does not deliver, under binding construct, they will incur quite severe delivery failure charges. So if we could just briefly go to the next slide. So far, we've summarized the entire tariff and 20 business practice manuals in a few minutes. I want to briefly now touch on what's been happening over the last year in terms of changes, and to begin with the revised transition plan. So these were participant proposed changes, very significant, and they were approved by FERC in January this year. So just over a year ago, last summer, we began a discussion with our participants about the transition time horizon, going from non-binding to binding. Back in the genesis of this program in 2019, we were expecting to go binding as soon as 2024. So last year, in 2024, we discussed with our participants what their current, after 5 years, their reasonable expectations were given the new dynamics that emerged and what was influencing their decisions on transitioning into a binding version of the program. So where these conversations led to was, instead of having a choice of various seasons about when to go binding, the participants decided that they would all have a default binding season of winter 27-28. And this is important because there is a 2-year exit provision in the RAP. So you have to give 2 years notice if you want to leave. So if that first binding season begins November the 1st in 2027, go back 2 years, and the deadline for saying you do not want to participate in a binding RAP program is October 31st this year. So during those initial binding seasons from winter 27-28 on, for the first 4, I believe there will be discounts on any deficiencies that are incurred. So there's still a little bit of a ramp and a soft landing allowed for there. So all these changes were filed with FERC last year, and they were approved in January. So now we're all working towards winter 27-28 and decisions related to that. Could I just go to the next slide, please? So at a high level, this is kind of like, what are the current challenges and opportunities that WP and participants are experiencing? What I'm about to talk about is not specific to any single participant or to all participants. They're just general themes that have emerged in discussions. So the BPMs, the business practice manuals, they were only completed in September last year. So one of the things participants have been working on is updating all their own internal processes to comply with RAP's demonstration requirements. There's a significant amount of data that has to get to the program operator, that's SPP, who are contracted with, so it can get validated, and that's a non-trivial task. These are significant logistical challenges, and the one issue that we're all collectively working through. The second issue is insufficient capacity, and that's kind of linked to issue number 4 in these boxes here. On the whole, participants' ability to pass the program is a concern. It is the point of the RAP to highlight these concerns. And this is kind of one of the major differences between, say, RAP and other studies. Just a different perspective that those studies might be run by WEC and NERC, and they tend to look at the region in aggregate and things that have been planned for in IRPs. What RAP is trying to look at is who has ownership of or contract for and has the rights to capacity in the region, and we're trying to validate all of that. So it's a significant administrative and data lift. So we are seeing, as is evidenced by some hesitation to go into a binding version of RAP, some lack of confidence in some participants' ability to meet those metrics. But again, that is not a broad brush statement in any way. But from, a rational perspective, if a utility is thinking about joining a voluntary program and there's some risk in their ability to comply, they of course are going to be hesitant. But the third bullet point here on operations programs improvements is much more positive. We are trying to evolve and change the program to address as many of our participants' concerns as we can. So there's a real opportunity to further integrate RAP with both EDAM and Markets Plus, and potentially utilize some of those markets optimization tools to tease out more efficiency and diversity sharing. And we currently have a dedicated task force underway looking at this. This next piece, a forward showing metrics evolution. Currently, the program as designed, participants only find out about their forward showing metrics, those planning reserve margins, 1 year ahead of when they do that forward showing. And so there's a lot of uncertainty because they have to commit to that season before they know what the metrics are. So as with issue 3, there is a task force underway right now that's looking into how can we change the analytics without introducing too much risk and uncertainty to get those PRMs to our participants earlier, so that they can try and incorporate them into their IRPs and procurement processes. That task force is ticking along. So what I just want to stress here is that it's important to note that RAP was built and designed by stakeholders and participants for its participants. And we are responsive to what works and what doesn't. and we're exploring many of these issues as a priority to try and get folks to binding. I think if we just skip 2 slides to slide 9, please. Thank you. Yep, that's the one. So once all the business practice manuals were in place, we opened the door for changes to the tariff, which would require FERC filing, and the BPMs, business practice manuals, which do not. We refer to this collectively as the change control process. So how it works, anyone in the world can submit an idea, and we call that a concept. If it's fully baked, if all the red lines to the tariff are there, there's impact analysis, it can go straight out for comment through our various committees and to the board, and then maybe a FERC 205 filing. If it's more urgent, our participants can make a plea straight to our board, and all those comment periods happen simultaneously rather than sequentially. But generally, someone has an idea, they don't have the bandwidth to think it through, so they submit that, and then it just sits in the hopper until the following January. Then our planning review committee considers all the ideas and prioritizes them, and then they develop a work plan to get through that prioritized list of ideas for the following July through June. So we are currently in the Q1, Q2 of our first work plan, which I'll discuss on the next slide. So that work plan was approved by the board this year in June, and here we go. So here's the schedule for all the task forces that we hope to be working on over the next year. And ideas will still keep coming, and they will be reviewed by the PRC next January. Then we'll have another work plan developed to kick off in July 2026. So I'm just going to focus on 2 very, very quickly. We have that earlier forward showing metrics 1, task force 2, a long task force estimated to last at least 6 months. I mentioned how they're trying to get the PRMs out earlier, also looking at ways to reduce PRM volatility. Then I just want to go into a little bit more detail for this group. This is my last point on the task force 1 there on day-ahead market optimization. So at its highest level, this task force is looking at the RAP operations program, where participants are matched with each other to help each other out. And it's looking at that through the emerging markets paradigm. Keep in mind that RAP was developed under a bilateral construct. So where the task force has ended up taking this idea, and we're still developing the proposal, is it's looking at all the aspects of the operations program, how a long participant holds back capacity, how it deploys that energy in a particular hour, how the 2 participants or more settle that energy transaction, what happens if there's a failure to deliver that energy, looking at all those components through the idea of what we're calling market-based operational subregions, or MBOSs. So I mentioned at the outset, we have these 2 subregions, Northwest with the Mid-Sea as a central hub, and then the Southwest, the Suite, with no agreed to central hub. In this MBOS paradigm, we would get rid of those 2 sub-regional footprints and instead align them with the market footprints for EDAM and Markets Plus. So that is a new foundation that we are working on, revisiting the components of the RAP operations program. It will obviously affect the forward showing further down line. What we're just focusing on operational efficiencies in the operations program first. So why? Well, by moving to an MBOS paradigm, we are whittling down the multiplicity of seams. So right now we have those 2 subregions, within them a mixture of market participants. So we can reduce those down to just the seams between the 2 markets, which will hopefully have to eventually be resolved or addressed by the market operators themselves. And that will allow for increased transparency on how much diversity can be shared between the 2 markets. And as RAP gets more clarity on that, that will allow us to pull that back to diversity awareness back into the forward showing planning piece and reduce the PRMs, which means everyone has to invest in less capacity, enabling a reliable system to be achieved more efficiently. So that's my last point. I tried to get through that as quickly as possible. It can take up to 5 days to give a presentation on RAP. So I'll conclude there. See if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very much appreciate the walkthrough of what's going on with the RAP. Do any members of the task force have questions for Mr. O'Brien? Okay. I have a couple questions. I just wanted to see if possibly you had any examples of how the RAP has effectuated protections across the two subregions during times of stress in this past summer. Did you have any sort of deployments or were there any examples of exactly like the RAP in action for this past season?
So that's a good point. So while participants are, as I mentioned, the tariff is fully active apart from the charges for any failures to comply with either the planning piece or the operations piece. So for numerous seasons, they have been doing that forward showing planning piece, and they have been not quite, I wouldn't say going through the motions, but they have been fully active in the operations sharing piece. But right now, they're tracking their data. As I mentioned, there's a significant amount of data as they compare each hour compared to what they submitted in the forward showing program, but no one is actually using the operations program piece yet to help each other out. So that's still a work in progress.
And then my second question is, if you have these task forces in play, still developing concepts for the program as you move towards the next phase of the RAP, which is this binding phase, and I apologize if you sort of went through this, but how are you looking to integrate new developments into the program if you've got this imminent deadline coming up for participants to potentially make decisions about staying in the RAP? And then I guess my second question is, if you can just touch on a little bit about how future participants could join and if there are opportunities to sort of step out of the RAP and then rejoin the RAP. So I guess that's a couple questions wrapped in there, Michael. I'm sorry.
I have to make notes on your questions.
Okay, thank you. I would get a big old objection if I was in a deposition for that being so compound.
So on the first point, it's just the new nature of the RAP that we're going to have this constant evolution. Having this October the 31st date coming up in the middle of our first work plan, has been both help and hindrance in many ways. So there are a bunch of participants who are committed to the program, and they want answers to some of these changes as soon as possible, but they also want to be thorough and not rush it. So you saw on that work plan, some of those are going out for 6 months, but October is kind of right in the middle of them. And so for other participants who are still have concerns about joining the RAP, and those concerns could be for a variety of reasons, administrative, logistical, governance, they want answers sooner rather than later, or at least some indication. So what that led to, in fact, was we had an in-person meeting of all our participants in Seattle 2 weeks ago. It was a closed meeting, so I can't discuss too many details. But what we did was the task forces were both aware of this deadline, the PRM task force and the Day Ahead Market task force. And so what we did was, rather than set our eyes on 6 months in the future, we set our eyes on this meeting 2 weeks ago. So all the participants worked on developing concept papers to try and address the concerns of RAP participants that still had questions about whether they were going to commit to winter 27, 28. And so they were very kind of indicative, kind of like what I said today. We're going to, if you have concerns about how the operations program is going to work in reality, like will a participant really be there for me when I need it? That is much more easily addressed if you're just working with participants within your own market than if you're trying to work on a sharing calculation with a participant in the same subregion as you, but within a different market. So we're just kind of trying to reduce those barriers of uncertainty there. So it's still an open question in terms of what things are going to look like the day after Halloween, November the 1st, but we will have a much clearer idea then about who we have going with us into a binding program. And so that will, whichever way it goes, lead to a lot more certainty. The next question was about how future participants join. So we call that onboarding, and we have an entire business practice manual dedicated to that in the 400 series. I think it might be BPM 403, but I'm not sure. I can check that for you. So to join the RAP, you have to sign what we call the RAPper. I mentioned that, a RAP agreement. And whenever you sign it, it's dated to come into effect September the 15th. But what we do and did do with Tucson and Constellation is we began working with them earlier this year in Q1, building up their competence and understanding of how the forward showing works and how the operations program works, how the governance of the program works, what the charges are. And we spent many hours going through all of the business practice manuals, making sure that they had opportunity to address any questions within them or any things that they needed clarification. So there's a huge learning effort to onboard participants. And then when they're comfortable, they sign the RAP agreement, and that comes into effect September the 15th. Something to bear in mind is our advanced assessment, where we collect data. It can take up to 2 years for the effect of that data to filter through to PRMs. So when they join the program, we do what is called a limited data request, where we try to get as much information as possible about their resources, but it may be that they don't get specific capacity value QCC for a particular resource they have. It may be that they may have to use in the short term some sort of class average. And on our website, we have the class averages for the upcoming and past seasons, so they can take a look at them and see how it might fit into their forward showing. On exit and entering, so here is the scenario you're posing is that a participant provides notice before October the 31st or on October the 31st that they do not want to participate in winter 27-28 in a binding program. There are a couple of ways a participant can withdraw. They can, standard withdrawal is that they are still part of the program for 2 years. So while they are not going to be in that binding program, there are still a number of non-binding forward showings and operational programs that they have invested in, and other participants have invested with them being invested in it in terms of the diversity of load and resource that they bring. So that's one, standard withdrawal. There is another type, expedited withdrawal, and that's where a participant says, I want out now. I don't want to do any more forward showings. I don't want to do any more operations programs. And when that is requested, we have to work with them to determine what is the appropriate level of compensation to the remaining participants to reflect the fact that they are remaining in a program that has a certain level of assumed load and diversity that is no longer there. And then the final piece of your question, what happens if a participant leaves, is in the standard withdrawal period, but then say they want to join again? We'll find out when that happens. It's going to be a tricky one, but you could see how there could be a lot of easier than a completely new participant onboarding, as we'd have so much of their data available. So yes, it could be that they leave and then in a year's time they say, okay, you've addressed all concerns, there's been market evolutions, I can see how I'm going to get the planning reserve margins much sooner now. I have that clarity I needed that I didn't a year ago, so I want to join the program again. So we will just work with the participants when that happens to onboard them in a way that doesn't adversely introduce unnecessary risk to the participants that are already remaining in the program. But yes, they could skip winter 27-28, get some sort of confidence both in the program and in their own ability to meet the requirements, and then join at a later binding season.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. O'Brien? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much again, Mr. O'Brien, for
Thank you.
coming and sharing with us, and we will look forward to future updates as you continue to do the work for resource adequacy in the West. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. I'll make a note to reach out to you on November the 1st.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have two presenters that are going to talk about pathways and an update to the Pathways Initiative, including the passage of California Assembly Bill 825. We will start with Kathleen Stacks, who is the Executive Director for Western Freedom and the Pathways Launch Committee co-chair, to give us, again, kind of an update and timeline on where everything stands with Pathways. So Kathleen, I will pass it over to you, and thank you again for your time and looking forward to the presentation.
Thanks so much,
Hello.
Jennifer. Oh,
Kathleen, before you start, can I ask a question of the organizers?
sure.
Hi, yes, my name is Jake Richardson. I'm with WRA. We're having issues following the conference online. Is there any way, there's no slides or voice coming through? Is there any way to get that up and running before this next presentation starts?
Sure. We actually had a couple of other people mention that. So Tony and Lisa, is there a way? I'm not quite sure what to do with that. But you're the second person who has now advised on that. So thank you.
So this is Antonia Caparelli for the record. I'm on the phone with our state IT. They're looking into what we can do. We may have to log out and log back in, because from my understanding from individuals, they tried to log in and then it dropped. So it may be something that we may have to log out, all of us log out completely and then restart the meeting. But I have IT on the phone as well too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
This is Director McClinton. Do you want to go ahead right now before we start the next half of the presentation? And again, we apologize everyone for the inconvenience, and everyone just go ahead and log out and log back in.
Do we want to put the actual link in the chat so everybody has the link, just in case that's got anything to do with it, Director?
I think that's a good idea. I'm sorry. I think that's a good idea as well.
Okay, so then, yeah, we
Put the
can.
link in the chat right now before I leave.
Okay, so we'll have everybody log out, log back in, and then we will just, Ms. Stacks, if you can, we'll get your presentation up, and then we can just kind of maybe take a roll call to see if people can at least see it. And because I'm getting texts from folks offline about the technical issues, so we can just kind of cross-check through all of our different channels and connections as to see what's going on. So, okay, thank you for the chat to make sure that we're all in here, and so we'll all log out and log back in.
All right, everybody log out, please. See you shortly.
Okay, it looks like we've got a good number of folks back in. I'm wondering, can the members of the task force just give a reaction? Could you see the presentation and hear the presenter? Just raise your hand if you did, or
I did. Yes.
Yes.
yeah, okay. So I could too. So it was just non-task force members. So for example, let me just like Miss Tanner, could you hear the presentation or see the presentation? I'm just checking folks that I know are not task force members or staff. Or Miss Goodman.
Sorry, Jennifer. Yes, I could see it.
You could see it. So
Yes.
it seems like it's a little hit or miss. Because I had folks saying that they could not. Miss Martinez, since you were one of the folks that texted, Miss Stacks, can you throw your presentation up on the screen so we can just see if folks can see it?
I'll do that for her. Hold on.
Oh,
sorry.
perfect. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you.
And then Jennifer, this is Nicole Ting. Can we just make sure we have a quorum for those of us
Sure.
that rejoined?
Yeah,
Great,
not
thank
a
you.
problem. I just kind of wanted to just check our stakeholder groups in this meeting and see how folks are doing in terms of being able to see and hear. Okay. There is currently a slide up that is a title slide. Is there anybody that is online that cannot see the title slide? Okay. I'm guessing everybody can hear. Let me just put something in the chat. Anyone online that cannot?
I can see and hear it. I just sent a message in the chat, but it said it was deleted for some reason.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. And then one more logistical piece, if we can just do this real quickly. I'm sorry, Henry. You
No,
had a
I was trying
question?
to unraise my hand. My apologies. I can see and hear. Thank you.
No sweat. Okay. Mr. O'Brien, you have your hand up?
No, I was just
No.
saying I was here. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I guess if we can just do one other thing for purposes of the record, if you are on the phone, can you please just identify yourself? I'll just call through the phone numbers that are here. We've got one that ends in a 70 with a starting zip code, area code of a 5. I actually think I know who that is. And let me see here. Nope. Yeah, so if you are on the phone and your phone number ends in 70, can you please just let us know who you are? Right, if you're on the phone and your phone number ends in 14, can you please let us know who you are?
I'm here.
This is Sydney Belcher with Western Resource Advocates, and just wanted to note, I think for those of us that are not task force members, there still is no Teams access.
Okay. Thank you for that. But you can hear us, correct? You just aren't able to see the presentation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So who ends in 59?
If it's helpful, I think that there may be a wrong link floating around because I was able to access it once I got the link directly from you and Kathleen. So Sydney
Okay.
and some others might be on an older link.
All right, let me go back to my Teams. Hang tight. Oh, if you're on the phone, you can't see the chat. Okay. Whose phone number ends in 59? All right. Whose phone number ends in 69?
Kanani Espinoza with the Rose Law Group, and I have the access from Teams from the agenda, but it's not working. It says
Okay.
like someone needs to put you in. And so for the people on the phone for the first time, we weren't able to access that new link that you had sent through the chat.
Okay. Kanani, give me your email.
It is KANANI at
Okay.
ROWELAWNV.com.
Okay, great. Whose phone number ends in 88? All right. Whose phone number? Let's go back to this. What I want to do is try to get the emails for the folks that are on the phone that are saying they can't get the access and be able to make sure that they can get in if they want to be able to see the presentation as well. So Kanani, I'm sending you this right now. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Thanks for being patient with the technical difficulties. All right, Kanani, let us know when you get that.
Ms. Chair, Jennifer, this is Leslie Mujica. Is it possible that the access to some people was blocked inadvertently of some way? Because Kanani just said that they had to be admitted in. And
Yeah,
we
but-
all have to be admitted in. So can we
Right.
check that?
Well, let's see if Kanani can get in here since I just sent it to her.
I just got the email, so I'm trying to join now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, Leslie, it should be the correct link in the agenda, so I don't know what glitch, what quirky glitch was going on. Okay, I see Kanani, so that's great. So if your phone
Thank
number
you,
ends in,
appreciate it.
yeah, you're so welcome. If your phone number ends in 8859 or 70 and you want to get the link that will let you be part of, be able to see the presentations, we need you to come off mute and give us your emails. And then we can get going again. And I'm sorry for this again. Okay. Going once, going twice. Presentations will be available on the link. On the website for GOE. Okay. All right. Let's quickly do a roll call again, Antonia, just to satisfy the quorum, and then we will get rolling with Ms. Stacks.
Yes, absolutely. I'm still on the phone with IT as of right now. This is Antonia Caparelli for the record. I apologize. They didn't see any system issues or anything like that. They were able to log into it from their computer and then from personal computers. So we're not sure as to what was going on. So hopefully by logging out and logging back in, that helped reset whatever bug was going on. So just wanted to provide you with that update.
Okay, great.
Moving forward.
Yeah,
with
and
Go ahead.
sorry, Antonia, let me just say, I don't know what the trouble is, because we had somebody who was in the room is now texting me to tell me they cannot get back in the room.
Madam
I
Chair,
don't
if you
know
would like to-
if there's anything we need to do otherwise from a public notice issue, but
I think right now,
Uh,
Jennifer, this is Director McClinton. I think we should just proceed. We're
Okay.
recording this anyway, and then we just put the link back up for those that's unable to get in. I don't want
Okay.
to continue to waste people's time, so let's record it
Yep.
and share the link. And for those, and make sure that the link is accessible at the conclusion of today's meeting.
Okay, I'm totally fine with that. Just from the perspective of public notice, public access, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else we needed to do. So, Antonia, if you want to call roll, that would be great.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is Antonia Caparelli for the record, and Madam Chair Jennifer Taylor,
Present.
David Rubin,
Present.
Robbie Hamlin,
Here.
Gail Bates,
Sorry,
Papayas?
present.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Delay. Luke Papayas,
Here.
Richard Perkins,
Here.
Kayla Dowdy, Elise Portello,
It's Porto. I'm here.
Porto, thank you. Louise Cruz,
Present.
Eric Henson,
Present.
Jeremy Newman, Dwayne McClinton,
Present.
Tom Burns, Henry Shields,
Yep, here.
Leslie
Mujica,
Mujica, thank you so much, Leslie.
present.
Nicola Christensen,
Present.
Haley Williamson, Michael Robertson.
It's Robertson, ma'am, and I'm present.
Thank you. Quorum is met, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right. With that, then I will pass it over to Kathleen Stacks to give us an update on the Pathways Initiative. Take it away, Kathleen.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thank you everyone on the task force. I'm excited to share this update. We've made a lot of progress in the last year. And so I'll just sort of walk you through what the Pathways Initiative progress has been, talk a little bit about AB 825 in California, and then touch on next steps. So next slide, please. Just as a quick reminder, the Pathways Initiative kicked off in summer of 2023 with a letter from regulators in 5 states, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, and New Mexico, sort of setting out a missive to the West to develop a proposal that would enable the largest footprint for electricity markets possible that includes California, excuse me, and sort of gets around some of the challenges that we've faced in the past with legislative efforts in California to change the governance of the CAISO. So recognizing that a full governance change of the CAISO is not really a feasible legislative path, the Pathways Initiative was really designed to try to find a different way to get to the same result. So after about 18 months of work, the Pathways Initiative developed a 3-step proposal. The first step was to elevate the WEM, the Western Energy Market's governing body, to primary authority over the Western Energy Imbalance Market and the Extended Day-Ahead Market. That is a change that could happen without needing any sort of legislative change. So it was a pretty significant elevation of independence, but not a full set of independence for the markets that the CAISO offered. For that, we developed step 2, and that was to create a new independent regional organization that would have sole independent authority over the EIM and EDM, and would contract back with the CAISO to operate those markets. And then the third step, which is really sort of beyond the scope of the launch committee and the sort of initial Pathways Initiative project, was to have the new regional organization evolve to add additional market services and up to and including an RTO in the West. So I'm going to focus on the first 2 steps here. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the first step, again, was to elevate the WEM governing body authority from its joint authority with the CAISO board to having primary authority over the EIM and EDAM. We had developed a trigger for that change to occur that required required utilities that represent at least 70% of the CAISO load to sign implementation agreements to join EDAM. And we needed geographic diversity as well. So we wanted to have an implementation agreement signed by an entity in the Northwest, and one signed by an entity in the Southwest. The CAISO got the tariff change itself approved by FERC in April, and then in July, Public Service of New Mexico signed an implementation agreement, making it joining with Portland General Electric, who met that Northwest geographic requirement, LADWP, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the Balancing Authority of Northern California, the Imperial Irrigation District, and Turlock Irrigation District. All of those are in California. And PacifiCorp, who was the first to sign an implementation agreement. And so when PNM signed in July, it hit both that 70% threshold and the Southwest geographic diversity requirement. And so that change from joint authority to primary authority went into effect this summer. Next slide, please. For the step two progress, just as a reminder, we finalized our full proposal back in November of 2024, and sort of passed over the work to the Formation Committee. The Formation Committee is a subcommittee of the full launch committee, which was a group of 26 folks representing 12 different sectors. The Formation Committee is a subset of that group. And has been working over the course of the last year to develop some of the initial processes and procedures and policies, as well as some of the foundational corporate documents for incorporation of the new regional organization. So we have hosted stakeholder meetings every single month where we've presented the work that we've done. We've received public input and comments on the various policies and procedures that we've shared with folks, and then developed a draft budget that really captures all the work that needs to get done between now and January of 2028, which was essentially the timeline that we developed to do all of this implementation work, including developing and stakeholdering the tariff changes that are necessary to move that authority from the WEM governing body to the new regional organization board. So we have just put out, we just received some public comments on our draft bylaws. So the launch committee and the formation committee are reviewing that input. We'll make some adjustments, and then we will put out we'll present the final version of the bylaws later this fall for review, and then with the intention of being ready to file those incorporation documents with the IRS in January of 2026. So we'll get the RO up and running and off the ground. Next slide, please. So one of the big things that we were waiting on and really didn't want to get ahead of the legislature was getting a bill through the California legislature that enabled California utilities to participate in markets that are governed by an independent entity. We also needed this change to enable the CAISO to basically transfer the authority over the energy markets to this different entity. And so everything about this bill was maybe harder than it should have been, but we ended up in, I think, as good a place as we could possibly be. With the language in AB 825, which was signed into law by Governor Newsom this last weekend, enables full implementation of the Pathways Step 2 final proposal. So we are really excited about overcoming this barrier and having a successful result from the California legislative process, and feel like we are really truly able to move forward in full force without any additional strings attached or any hoops that we're going to need to go through for the West. So being able to seat an independent board and go through the process to move that authority over the EIM and EDAM fully and completely is a process that is now fully underway. So I'll talk a little bit about what was in 825. Go to the next slide, please. A couple of the sort of primary aspects of the bill were the public interest protections. This is really a list of provisions that the regional organization must have to enable the California utilities to join that reflects the same public interest protections that were in the final proposal from last fall. So we were planning to implement all of those things anyway. So now the CAISO is going to, go through the box checking exercise as the formation committee and the launch committee work with the CAISO to implement all of these pieces for the RO. But it is also, I think, one of the most important aspects of the Pathways Initiative proposal was this very comprehensive set of public interest protections that includes everything from maintaining the body of state regulators and the ability for regulators to engage in this process, to creating a consumer advocate organization and really enabling more access for those who are representing the consumers across the West. And then one of the most important pieces as well was ensuring that the regional organization protects and maintains each state's ability to set and enforce its own energy policy. So nothing that the RO does will impede any state's ability to set their own energy policies. This was a really important foundational piece along the process for the launch committee, and is now captured in AB 825. Another important aspect was requiring that all the services be voluntary. This, again, was another part of the Pathways final proposal, and making sure that any of the market participants are able to participate or leave, which gets to the next provision as well. So we wanted to make sure that that we made it very clear that these market services and market offerings, both the energy services that with the EIM and EDAM as they're constructed today, and then additional services in the future, are voluntary. These are not going to be required or mandatory services. So market participants will be able to decide which pieces that they want to participate in and which ones they don't. And then finally was the reporting requirements. And this is something that, to make the California legislature feel like they've got the information that they're able to do their job as we move forward. The California Energy Commission, the Public Utilities Commission, and the CAISO will continue their annual reporting and just add a handful more things to that list of information that they're going to need to provide. Next slide, please. So moving forward, there's a handful of steps both for the for implementation of the pathways of the RO, as well as compliance with 825. And so this is just a very high level set of steps that are going to need to get done. We are in the process of digging deep and really kind of working on a very detailed task list and timeline between now and January of 2028. But at a high level, the CAISO is going to have to run a stakeholder process to develop and review the tariff modifications that are required to move this authority from the WEM governing body to the new RO. So the CAISO will be running that stakeholder process. The launch committee will continue to run our own stakeholder processes. Once we seat a new independent board, which we're aiming for next summer, that RO board will be in place to be able to negotiate with the CAISO for a service contract, and will oversee, again, all the rest of the sort of implementation pieces for the new regional organization. Ultimately, FERC is going to have to approve those tariff modifications for this to actually go into effect. And And at that point, the Board of Governors of the CAISO will do an evaluation to make sure that all of those public interest protections and various other requirements that are listed in 825 are met. They're going to have to then present those findings to the legislature and have a conversation. The legislature does not need to take any action. This is just an informational presentation. And then at that point, the CAISO board will adopt a resolution saying, all of these boxes are checked. We've met our requirements. The regional organization meets all of the requirements that the legislature laid out and that reflect the recommendation from the Pathways Initiative final proposal. And then ultimately, the California Public Utilities Commission is going to go through a formal decision to essentially verify those same things. That is a step to allow the California utilities, the regulated utilities, to participate in these independently governed energy markets as well. This should feel like a very familiar thing to the West. There are lots of regulated entities that are going to their commissions to get approval to participate in markets. So this is not something that is different or special for California. It is something that is very consistent with what other requirements in other states in the West look like. Next slide, please. So at this point, the next steps for the launch committee, we're going to continue to host our monthly public stakeholder meetings. Our next one is actually this Friday, where we're presenting information about the bylaws, updates on the stakeholder process, updates on the progress that we're making to develop our new sectors, which are going to have to be in place by January so that we can seat a nominating committee to choose the initial board members for seating, hopefully again in July of 2026. A funding update. We've got some fundraising we need to do to cover the expenses for the launch committee and the initial RO over the next couple of years. So we'll be providing updates on all of those pieces and all of the information for those meetings, as well as previous meetings, and any documents that we have produced and are put out for public comment are available on the Pathways website, which obviously you can't see because it's a hyperlink here, but if you don't have it, please let me know. Happy to share that. With that, I will pause and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stacks, for that update. Do any members of the task force have any questions on this presentation? Go ahead, Mr. Rubin.
Thanks. Really not a question, and just a comment that I wanted to thank Kathleen for her leadership on the launch committee. She was absolutely instrumental in Pathways achieving the remarkable success that it has, and just look forward to the continued collaboration moving forward.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure to work with you and our other fellow our launch committee members. And I'm looking forward to getting all of this off the ground as well.
Anyone else have any questions or comments or general congratulations on getting through this? Okay. I actually don't, well, I guess I have one question, and that is, just briefly, can you talk a little bit about, with the passage of this bill, the sort of group of stakeholders that coalesced around it to move it forward to be able to take these critical next steps for the Pathways Initiative?
Yeah, I think it's, and I appreciate that question because I was remiss in not mentioning it. We ended up building a coalition where we had over 70 organizations signing letters, showing up to lobby, having conversations in the halls, and penning op-eds. And it was, I think, truly the most diverse set of stakeholders and the most diverse coalition that they may have ever seen in the halls of the California legislature. And it really did range from utilities, IOUs, public power, CCAs, to environmental interests, including some some of the more progressive climate organizations, and then EDF and NRDC were both co-sponsors of the bill with labor. We had IBEW at the table, really leading the charge. We had business, we had developers. It ran the entire gamut. The Sierra Nevada Brewing Company wrote an op-ed at one point talking about how important these changes are for energy customers. So we really did have the most diverse coalition probably on any energy issue ever that came together to support. And I think, that was reflective of the kinds of stakeholder engagement that we've seen through the Pathways Initiative thus far. And we're hoping to keep those voices and entities engaged in the process moving forward. As we're developing our sectors, we have 9 sectors that we identified for participation, both in the nominating committee for picking the RO board members, as well as our stakeholder representatives committee. So moving forward, identifying and prioritizing stakeholder initiatives for the RO. Some of those sectors are new for the West. So having a large commercial and industrial customer sector, having a distributed resources sector, having a consumer advocate sector that is separate from the PIOs. All of those pieces are really intended to be able to build on this momentum and engagement from a really broad group of stakeholders. So we're excited to see that momentum continue as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Last call for any questions for Ms. Stacks. Okay, seeing none, thank you so much again. Congratulations on the bill. Congratulations on the continued work, and look forward to continuing to get updates for this task force. Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, continuing the discussion on pathways, is going to be some additional updates and next steps from Brian Turner, who is a director with Advanced Energy United. I know he's going to talk about the launch committee work that he is a member of. So, Mr. Turner, I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chair Taylor, and thank you to the task force for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here. This is one of my favorite subjects, so glad to be talking with you all about it. First off, just to introduce Advanced Energy United, we are a trade association representing roughly 100 different companies, non-utility companies from across the energy spectrum. We've got utility scale generation and rooftop solar and storage. We've got smart devices in homes and electric vehicles and charging equipment. We've also got several large commercial and industrial customers, large energy consumers. Our members are united in supporting policies and markets that support a thriving advanced energy ecosystem that lowers costs and promotes reliability. I'm the Western Regulatory Director. That means I get involved in Public Utility Commission dockets, including at the PUCN. And I've been a member of the Pathways Launch Committee since its inception, representing the technology providers category. I'll be speaking from my perspective, not the Pathways Initiative Launch Committee as a whole, though I am a member of the Launch Committee. And just on a personal level, I want to note I've been involved in different initiatives to foster coordination and cooperation across Western states and utilities for close to 2 decades now. And I have to say the Pathways Initiative is perhaps the most exciting and successful effort I've been involved in because it addresses some of the primary long-term obstacles to cooperation by creating this stable shared governance framework. Next slide, please. So there's really just 2 things I want to share today. I've just got 2 slides. One, I want to talk about how the Pathways Initiative supports the economic opportunity for Nevada as envisioned in SB 448. And secondly, I'll talk about how the Pathways regional organization that we're setting up can evolve over time to continue to promote that economic benefit and all the goals of SB 448. And when I'm referring to the Pathways regional organization here, since it isn't yet founded, though we expect to incorporate it in January, I may slip into the will form or talk about it as if it's done, but really I'm talking about the Pathways final proposal, which is what we will be implementing. So first, I want to highlight how Pathways supports the broadest and deepest possible market for Nevada to participate in and all the benefits that brings to Nevada. First, I have to note that Nevada is increasingly central to electricity in the West. It used to be that when, at least looking at transmission, people would talk about the donut hole of Nevada because it seemed like transmission went north-south through California, it went east-west across Idaho or across Arizona and New Mexico. And Nevada was kind of carved out in the middle. Well, that's no longer true with new transmission in place, under construction, planned, and the resource development build out in the state. It's really much more central to energy in the West. It's more of a center or crossroads for energy transfers across the West. And that's an enviable place to be, as it means a stronger business case for resource and transmission development, as well as for companies looking to locate with a strong energy supply. But at its core, I would say a bigger market means lower costs for Nevada consumers. Nevada will benefit from low-cost imports. In the near term, that may be the very low-cost solar imports from California. But long-term and more broadly, that means benefiting from supply diversity across a broader geographic region where you will see excess generation at more times of the day and more times of the year that Nevada can benefit from. On the other side of the ledger, Nevada will benefit from sales of electricity from a deeper market to absorb excess generation from Nevada development. And those sales that NV Energy makes are passed back through to consumers through regulation by the PUCN. So that's to the benefit to Nevada consumers. My third point, we expect that those benefits will be seen by new industry in Nevada as well. As members like ours in the large commercial and industrial sector, who are nowadays looking as much to a sufficient and reliable supply of energy as they are to low cost, but both of which are supported by a broader and deeper market. My fourth point relates to new resource development, especially the renewable resources that Nevada is blessed with. Broader and deeper markets substantially improve the business case for new resource development because NV Energy's excess generation or battery storage will see higher revenues on the market when it's not needed in Nevada. This improves the overall financial performance for a project and lets more projects pencil out, basically. And finally, I want to mention something near and dear to my heart, the opportunity in the Pathways RO for distributed energy resources like rooftop solar and storage, smart thermostats and other smart devices, electric vehicles and charging equipment that will be increasingly prevalent in Nevada and can be aggregated as aggregated DERs or virtual power plants. They can also participate in markets. In fact, CAISO was one of the first wholesale markets in the country to design a participation pathway for aggregated DERs. Before it was mandated by FERC, but when FERC mandated it, it was pretty much modeled on the CAISO model. And so the EDAM market has a pathway for aggregated DERs, and I know that NV Energy is looking to participate in that. And one of the innovations of the Pathways proposal that Ms. Stacks highlighted is that there is a DER sector representative, so that developing the rules for resources participating in the market will help be shaped by that DER sector representative, something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. There isn't a specific DER sector participating in stakeholder initiatives to help represent the interests of what will be thousands, hundreds of thousands of devices across Nevada being dispatched into the market. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'd just like to talk about how we see Pathways expansion going forward, how it supports an overarching governance framework that can support a variety of market initiatives over time, with equal representation of interests across the West and across electricity stakeholders. First, the governance structure itself is built to address state interests, the public interest, and a variety of stakeholder interests in a number of intermeshed ways. I've just listed a few here. Ms. Stacks touched on a few of them. The board itself, well, first of all, it's a 501c3 corporation dedicated to the public interest, consumer interest, and market efficiency. The board itself, it's required to have expertise in public interest, including perhaps from former regulators or legislators sitting on the board. That does not exist in any wholesale market in the country. It is nominated by the sectors that is meant to encompass the whole range of Western interests. And the state input, the representation of state interests to the board, is accomplished in a number of ways. We mentioned the Public Policy Committee. This is a committee of the board that is charged with maintaining relationships with state officials, also federal power marketing administrations and public power, and to consult with them before significant decisions. There is the body of state regulators, modeled on the existing BOSR that advises the Western energy markets now. That will transfer over into a BOSR for the Pathways RO. There is this new consumer advocate organization made up of the official consumer advocates in each participating state that will both empower those individual consumer advocate offices and represent them within the stakeholder process and advising the board. There is a new Office of Public Participation that is designed to advise the general public on how they can get involved, and less resourced groups on how they could get involved in decision making. And then one more aspect of public interest I wanted to highlight: the sector representation. This is, as Ms. Stacks mentioned, how new initiatives are developed, the actual proposals to change the tariff or to change rules in the market. That is a level playing field amongst these 9 sector groups. None of those groups have an individual veto, which is different than how many other markets in the country operate. They advise the board, they have equal standing before the board, and the board can weigh those different interests as it will, but no one sector exerts a veto. And there's one more aspect I wanted to mention really quick: Department of Market Monitoring, and several layers underneath that. But an independent market monitor, which currently exists in CAISO, would be given a dual reporting structure to also the Pathways regional organization. Each of the state consumer advocates would have equal access to the data and reports generated by that market monitor. The oversight committee of the market monitor, the separate market surveillance committee, would also have a dual reporting structure to the Pathways RO. And then the RO would have its own dedicated market expert to ensure that the CAISO is implementing the markets in the way intended by the RO governance decisions. All right, and then lastly, I just want to talk about this, how this overarching governance structure, which is intended to be a level playing field for all these interests, can support a variety of markets and market services over time. At inception, the markets underneath this structure will be the energy imbalance market, the real-time market, and the day-ahead market. But it is designed to add services over time, up to and including the full range of RTO services, and up to and including the full range of services envisioned in SB 448. Each of these would be incremental and voluntary, keeping with that Western tradition of voluntary incrementalism. An a la carte menu, if you will. Utilities can select one or none of those services, subject to some services will need to work together, just the way the grid works. But some of the ones that we've discussed, and it's discussed in our final step 2 proposal, ancillary services, voltage control, and grid flexibility could be a relatively easy add-on, as I understand it, to the existing real-time and day-ahead markets. Some coordinated transmission operations. This already occurs with CAISO and its participating transmission owners, and we could imagine that structure transferring to other transmission operations by other utilities in the West by their choice, and over time, transmission planning or interconnection queue management could be a service that is offered under this umbrella of regional governance, and even balancing authority consolidation, which is really when you get into the full RTO type structure, could one day be offered under this governance, and all following the same governance model, with the Pathways RO providing that that the public and state interests are represented, and then contracting with CAISO as a service provider, a very technically proficient service provider. So with this structure, we believe that Pathways can grow over time to encompass all those services and benefits contemplated by SB 448. And I think that was the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner. Do any members of the task force have any questions for Mr. Turner? Mr. Hansen.
Yeah, hi, Brian. This is Eric Hansen with Wynn Resorts. I have a question for you regarding congestion charges and kind of the shifting of those to other EDAM participants. January of this year, Pacific Corp made a filing to amend their OAT that would allow them to join EDAM. Out of that, PowerX did some initial studies to look at the effects of congestion shifting and changing charges from the traditional way that we buy and sell transmission. We're a 704B customer, by the way. We can enter into bilateral agreements the same way the utility can. That by allowing CAISO to make this shift in congestion charging, it actually would show that our cost of moving energy around in the Western grid could go up. Just the transmission component could go up 5 times from what it is today. Has there been any movement on that? And I know PowerX intervened, and
there has, and I think I need to leave it to Stacy Crowley from CAISO to fill in on the latest of that. I will say the analysis was controversial, not universally agreed that the methodology for that analysis was correct. And there has been revisions to that tariff, which I believe, at least in Pacific Corp's case, has been approved. But I don't know the latest in the past couple of months. And so I have to phone a friend on that. And I believe Ms. Crowley's coming up next. So it might be a good question for her.
Okay, yeah, my concern is obviously increased costs for all Nevadans, because if we have to pay a 704B customer, NV Energy will as well, and that'll pass it on to our employees and neighbors here in Southern Nevada.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Hansen. Mr. Cruz-Negron.
Thank you. So I have a question. It was mentioned that it's expected to have some increased transmission capacity. Is that transmission capacity going to be centered around Las Vegas and Reno area, or is going to cover the rural areas in Nevada as well? Let's say Ely, Elko, Winnemucca.
Two things I think to answer, as far as I understand. First off, the transmission capacity that's been built, that is being planned or under construction, that's all within NV Energy's system. That's according to their NV Energy's planning and construction time frame. There is not currently any transmission planning or development occurring under the auspices of any pathway, the RO or regional market, right? That's all still within the authority of NV Energy. The other, in terms of increased capacity, there is a benefit to the market coming along and moving the actual use of transmission, where the transmission owners grant that access to the market to use it in the day-ahead time frame. You can actually eke more transfers out of the existing transmission capacity. So I don't know if that directly answers your question. I wasn't sure which direction it went.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question. Also with the, let's say the batteries, that excess generation, you said that will stay in Nevada but may go to other markets. So how is that regulated, or the excess generation will go to the highest bidder, or will go to reduce the cost to ratepayers? What is
Yes,
expected or intended?
Yes, so all the resources that NV Energy operates within the state are subject to the regulation at the PUCN, and though any revenues that they receive from the market would be regulated and returned to consumers according to the PUCN's regulation. That's not to shareholders of NV Energy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I have hopefully two quick questions for you, Mr. Turner. One is, within your DER sector, does any of that work include discussions of opportunities for demand side management and specifically demand response aggregation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, demand response aggregation would be squarely within that aggregated DER participation within the CAISO markets.
Okay. And are you looking at other markets to specifically build out what would be a fulsome and robust program for demand response aggregation in a potential pathways market?
You mean other jurisdictions, other utilities?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
other utilities or other RTOs, or what is the model that you guys are currently sort of looking at as what would be the best opportunities for demand response?
As I understand the participation models, it's most likely going to be through the utilities bidding those resources in, right? Having access to the aggregated DERs, whether within their own program or a third-party program, and then bidding it in as the market participant. And I know that NV Energy has been there's an initiative currently underway at the CAISO regarding enhancements to the distributed resource participation. NV Energy has been active in that. Portland General has been active in that. So I know at least those two jurisdictions are very interested in greater participation.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because if you look across North America at other markets, you've got market-driven, market program aggregation of demand response in like PJM and MISO and even Alberta and Ontario. And I just didn't know what model you might be looking at, whether it was that participation via the utilities or if it was participation directly for aggregation into and controlled by and, programmed by the market itself.
I think that is a growth area for us going forward, and one that I'm glad to have the DER sector as in developing the rules, right? I do think that there is, it's mandated by FERC, a pathway for third-party participation in the market from other jurisdictions. I think that there is some work to be done, whether it be prior to the governance transfer to the Pathways RO in this current initiative at CAISO, or after that transfer of authority could occur under the stakeholder process at the Pathways RO, to make sure that those pathways for third-party aggregator participation are clear in other jurisdictions.
Okay. Mr. Hansen has another question.
Yeah, I have a quick follow-up, Brian. This is Eric Hansen again from WIN. So you mentioned the markets are voluntary for the participants in there. If NV Energy decides that they want to participate in EDAM, can 704B customers opt out and not participate?
I do not know the answer to that question of Nevada law. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, it's actually probably more of a governance structure question for the actual pathways. So I'd be very curious if there's a way that we could figure that out.
Oh, interesting question. I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Rubin, did you have a question? I saw your hand up for a minute.
Oh, I was just gonna give a quick answer to Eric that under either of the day-ahead market constructs, once the balancing authority joins, all customers within the BA have to participate.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was concerned about.
Thanks. And then I just had one other question for you, Mr. Turner. Under Senate Bill 448, one of the things that we are tasked with doing is providing information to the governor and the legislature about businesses and industries that could locate in the state as a result of the state's position in an organized, competitive regional wholesale electricity market. And I know you mentioned large load customers, you mentioned DERs, but is there any more context, detail, color you want to give that so we can start having that real a robust discussion on economic development opportunities around an RTO for the West or for Nevada?
I mean, those are the two sectors with which I'm most familiar, and I think we hit on the DER, aggregated DER's participation model. I will say that for large industrial and commercial participants, they are looking forward to the opportunity for what's called virtual power virtual power purchase agreements, VPPAs, through the EDAM market that would allow them to access, benefit from new renewable development to meet their corporate goals, to meet their energy supply goals. It's not, again, it's not a PPA, it's a virtual PPA. It benefits from some of the price benefits of the market without being direct energy supply.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. Seeing no other comments, questions, again, Mr. Turner, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your work and look forward to continuing to follow what's going on with Pathways and these the sector work. So thank you again and look forward to hearing future updates. Okay. Next up, we are going to pass this on to Stacy Crowley to give us an update on CAISO's activities. And thank you, Ms. Crowley, for being so patient while we waited through some of the tech issues. Looking forward to hearing from you, so take it away.
Thank you. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
You are all good. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And thanks to the full task force members for being here and going through these updates. Appreciate it. And I have a couple of updates here. Next slide, please. I wanted to go through one just to give you the latest on our transmission planning and generator interconnection processes. I know those were of interest to the group last time. We've got a couple updates and just wanted to expand on that work. And then we'll touch on markets. And fortunately, we had a couple of great speakers before me with Ms. Stacks and Mr. Turner providing an update on much of the activities. So I won't repeat those updates. So thank you so much. And we'll go to the next slide. So just a reminder for any of the new task force members that the California ISO is a balancing authority, just like NV Energy. We have the responsibility of maintaining supply and demand within a footprint that includes a number of other utilities. So we combined the service areas of PG&E, Southern Cal Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric, among others. And we manage their high voltage electric system for them. And we do that with a market. And that market is now what you all know is being offered in the WEIM and the extended day ahead market. We also perform the transmission planning services and other reliability coordinator services as well. So just to set the stage there. Next slide. So I wanted to just set the table a little bit on where our balancing authority area is, the California ISO footprint, in terms of being resource sufficient. And right now, the state of our grid is quite strong. Since the unfortunate brownouts of 2020, it really was a wake-up call for us and the state to really get together, coordinate, and make sure that we are getting those resources onto the grid that can support the load in our footprint. And so over the past 5 years, really, we've put 27,000 megawatts of new resources online. And you can see from this graph that they represent a variety of resource types. But that has really helped our footprint become strong. And we have found the past couple years that we are resource sufficient throughout our most challenging months, which are the summer months. So that has been very good. And you can see from that purple bar, a lot of it has been storage, which has been fascinating to watch how storage has been integrated onto the system. We saw our first set of storage resources back in 2015, I think, and they have grown to now 13 gigawatts in our portfolio, 13,000 megawatts. So quite a bit of storage has been added to the system, and they are, through our market design and our constructs, they are performing like we need them to, meaning they are charging when there's ample sun during the day, and they are discharging, meaning supporting our evening ramps in the afternoon, in the evening hours. So that's been really fascinating to see. And again, it's one resource in a mix of many, but one that through a continuous evolution of market design with our stakeholders has become quite useful in our daily resource challenges. So wanted to set that stage there. Next slide, please. So our resource and planning process is really a four-legged stool. And we do that in real close coordination with the California Public Utilities Commission and the Energy Commission. They have distinct roles. We all actually have distinct roles, which has been codified in a memorandum of understanding that was refreshed in late 2022. And this diagram is just meant to show that interconnection of responsibilities and coordination that has to occur really annually, if not more frequent. And we, as the California ISO, have two responsibilities here in the transmission planning and the generator interconnection. But we receive all of the inputs to conduct the transmission planning from the California Energy Commission, where they develop the load forecasting. They understand what's happening around the state in terms of not just loads on the system, but also energy efficiency programs, demand response, all of that. And they provide the load forecast. Then the California Public Utilities Commission works with their jurisdictional utilities to develop resource procurement plans. And so it is up to those states and the policies within that state to decide what to procure and where to procure it. And then we go ahead and develop the transmission planning necessary to meet those new resource procurement strategies and location. And then finally, when resources want to enter into the system and get connected onto the grid, we run an interconnection process, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but it's something that we're really trying to improve. You might have heard that a lot of utilities and ISOs are seeing a huge influx of generator requests, so much so that it's sort of bogged down the system. We are trying to find ways to really streamline that and cut out those projects that are really more speculative and don't have haven't gone down the road of having a site control and other key areas of progression to know that they are a viable project. Next slide, please. Not to be able to read this, but this is just a sort of a graphic representing our annual transmission plan roadmap. This is where we look at several zones that we have established within the state where transmission and resources occur. And we look at a number of scenarios to identify where transmission will most be needed based on those inputs that I mentioned to you. All that to say is that there's generally a number of transmission projects that come out of that plan. Some of them are eligible for competitive solicitation, and so we run a competitive solicitation process for those projects, and that usually helps us get the lowest cost solution for those transmission needs. Next slide, please. In addition to our annual transmission plan, we also do a 20-year outlook As you all know, it takes a long time to build transmission lines in the West for a number of reasons. But what we have done over the years is said, let's look as far out as we can and identify where likely transmission could be built and should be built. And we identify really areas to look at and to focus on. And that helps us then inform the annual plan where we can get down to specifics. But within that process, we have noticed over the past several years that there are some key projects in the West that are represented here, some of which are square in Nevada's footprint, including the GreenLink project, which has already been approved. So these projects are all important. We are one interconnected grid. And so when we run our market, which I'll get to in a bit, we are running a market through all the transmission networks in the West based on transmission availability and contracts. But the West is one big interconnection. And so really we're finding that a lot of these projects help multiple utilities in multiple states and jurisdictions. We have tried to be creative with our way of recognizing that problem of the chicken and the egg, right? The Transwest Express project is one example, as is the SunZia project, where this was going to be a project that spanned a couple of states. It didn't quite fit squarely into the FERC Order 1000 transmission planning process, but there are several potential beneficiaries to these lines. We've developed something called the subscriber participating transmission owner model, where those lines could become part of our operating system, but they would essentially get subscribers to their line, and that those costs wouldn't go directly to our footprint consumers. They would be paid for by those who have subscribed to the line. So that's a way of bringing in these transmission assets without having folks that might not be benefiting paying for them. So this is a model that we are pleased to see take off, and those two projects, SunZia and Transwest, are the first taking advantage of that model. And then we have another type of model, which is the SWIP North project, the Southwest Intertie Project North, which also occurs in from central Nevada to Idaho. That is a project that has beneficiaries, including Idaho Power, NV Energy, the California footprint, and more. And that is a sort of bi-directional benefits, both bringing energy to the north and then down south. So again, trying to be creative and really recognizing that all of these lines, they will all be needed, right, with the load growth that everybody's seeing, and trying to get these projects off the ground as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So Jennifer asked me to touch on FERC Order 1920, which is a order to really look at long-term transmission planning. We, in fact, have been doing that, the 20-year planning horizon, for the past several years, and we're actually on our second iteration. And it's something, again, that I think FERC saw as a necessary element across the U.S. and really looking to make sure that because of the long lead times with transmission, that the entities are really getting ahead of some of the load growth challenges. And this order is complex, but I just summarized a couple of things here, really looking at extreme weather events and how to stress test some of that in your planning. And of course, considering alternatives to just new transmission lines, enhancing the transmission that exists, providing some efficiencies within those, which is a whole new industry now, and I think a necessary one to make sure that we're taking full advantage of the lines that are already built. The other big component is the engagement with states, and I think that's been an important evolution over time. And so now there is a 6-month formal agreement or engagement opportunity with states that allows them to look at these projects and look at the potential for the cost allocation solutions there. And then, of course, just continue to improve information sharing between planning regions. I think that's always been a challenge, and we have 3 planning regions here in the West. I think we have a pretty good relationship with all 3, amongst all 3, but again, making sure that the information is being passed through. So that's a quick summary. Next slide, please. And just the fact that we are abiding by many aspects of that rule already, but we are running a public process right now around compliance with the full order. And so we have suggested some enhancements to what we do now, and that is really underway now. So we haven't filed anything with FERC yet, but we are working with the 2 other planning regions. I think we've all filed for extensions to make sure that we are in alignment and that we're working closely with each other on the processes. We will adjust our planning cycle now to every 2 year. I think that'll help really get better information every 2 years rather than sort of the quick annual cycle, among other things. Next slide, please. So jumping into markets, I think you've heard quite a bit already. I just wanted to give a quick overview of what we have.
Hi, I don't know what it is.
Yep. A question?
I think that was just an interruption. If you
Okay,
want to
got it.
continue, thank you.
Sure. So what we have today that is occurring every 5 minutes now is the Western Energy Imbalance Market, and you can see the footprint has grown since you last saw this. We have Black Hills joining in 2026, and then we have the Imperial Irrigation District down in Southern California joining in 2028. In fact, they're joining both EIM and EDAM at the same time, so that's unique. But this real-time market is really what was the toe dipping in the water on this regional coordination in markets. And since 2014, it has really proven to be benefit to all participants, including NV Energy, who began in 2015. I think I won't go through this in detail, but I think it's really taking advantage of those pluses and minuses within the hour, because before that, utilities were just looking at imbalances in hourly blocks. And so just trading within that hour has provided a lot of benefits, taking advantage of that geographic and resource diversity. That's just the sort of the physics of this whole thing that has worked so well. So we've got over 80% of the load in the West, and that is just accrued benefits for all. So the next slide highlights that. And I am just excited to see NV Energy hit that $1 billion mark, but right now they are at $828 million since they joined in December of 15, and that is essentially savings in production cost and and I think just have been a real benefit, both in terms of being able to sell excess power, but also buy lower cost power when needed. And I think that's happened across the board. You'll see that every quarter, depending on the seasonal loads and impacts of the region, some entities do better than other quarters, but essentially everybody's benefiting across the board. So really great to see that. And it's proven to be a great reliability tool too. That is sort of anecdotal and maybe more than that, but it's not something we measure, but it has really proven to help in extreme weather across the West. We've had several examples of both cold events and heat events where the West has helped each other out and transfer energy in that real-time market when it's needed. So a big benefit there, almost $7.5 billion in savings across the market so far. Next slide, please. This is just another way to look at it. Some people like different graphics. I just put these up here. We do this every quarter. We put out a quarterly benefits report. The flow diagram on the left is showing the second quarter of this year's flow. So we do that each quarter. And as I said, sometimes it's different depending on the season and the events. But you can see where NV Energy has been both an importer and an exporter and where it's going. So kind of a neat flow chart there. And then to the right, of course, nothing to read up close, but just the fact that the West is interconnected. And these ties are important for a number of reasons, and these extreme events and just the benefits of accessing these resources and finding the lowest cost resources really inherent in that diagram there to the right. Next slide, please. So we're taking this market, the real-time market, and essentially extending those principles to the day-ahead market and a voluntary market again, and taking the ability to transfer energy into the day ahead, which yes, it adds a significant amount of transfer volume, but it also really does, I think, provide a huge reliability benefit that you don't quite get in the real-time market. And that's to be able to say, okay, tomorrow we know there's going to be challenges on the grid. Let's we have more visibility into that, and we can really plan more carefully for those resources and contingencies the day ahead versus sort of reacting real time. We do that in real time, but it just provides a better opportunity. So we're seeing a huge benefit in reliability above and beyond what you get in the Western Energy Imbalance Market right now. These are just some of the key provisions to the right. Really shows you it's voluntary. There are no exit fees. A 6-month notice will be required, but you can leave if you'd like. It really leaves the responsibilities for the balancing function to stay within the balancing authority, so the utility like NV Energy. And it preserves that historical transmission revenue for the provider's transmission. So a number of good elements that came out of a long and really, I think, robust stakeholder process to develop this, in which a number of Nevada entities were engaged. And so we appreciate that, but it took a village to get this EDAM design right. We have full FERC approval over the design, including the recent enhancements to the congestion revenue allocation model, which I think was brought up by Eric earlier. And in doing so, FERC approved our enhancements to that, as well as at the same time, Pacific Corp and Portland General's EDAM OAT filings as well, finding that they were all just and reasonable along those lines, recognizing that enhanced revenue allocation model. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up. Next slide. These are the entities that have agreed to join EDAM and those that have indicated their interest in pursuing it. So I don't need to name them all, but we're excited to have Pacific Corp start. We are launching EDAM in the spring of next year, followed by Portland General in the fall. And we have a number of other entities. It's interesting that we will now have all of the California balancing areas involved in EDAM. They have all agreed to join, which is exciting for us. And also, as Kathleen mentioned, Public Service of New Mexico signed their implementation agreement on July 1. The others that have expressed interest. Next slide. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think Kathleen touched on what the Pathways proposal has suggested. This reflects the step 1 actions of the Pathways proposal. So I think Kathleen expressed it nicely. This provides that the governing body, the Western Energy Markets governing body, now has primary authority over market rule changes. So this was significant, and it also adds this ability, if there is a dispute and that dispute cannot be resolved prior to a number of other stakeholder processes, and we really want to try to get to resolution. If they can't, then may be submitted. Strong assurance that the Western Energy Governing Body, that's an independent body, really has a strong voice in these matters. Much stronger. In fact, things would not go through if they did not support the proposal. So all that to say is that our stakeholder processes remain the same. It's open to everybody. There's a number of ways to engage. The states have a voice within the body of state regulators. Chair Williamson is on the body of state regulators, and we've appreciated her engagement. She was the past chair of that body, and is just allows the body of state regulators, the commissioners, to understand what's happening, weigh in, ask questions, all of that stuff. And it's been a huge value for us. And I think for the consumers as well. So I just wanted to highlight that the process has just begun as to July 1. This is the process in place, and we're excited to see it evolve. Next slide. And I will not go too much into this, all to say that it continues to evolve, right? So the pathway step 2 is what Kathleen and Brian discussed. And we are pleased to see that Assembly Bill 825 was passed in California, signed by the governor on Friday. And it gives us a set of actionable items that we can do, and we will do as expeditiously as possible, working with the formation committee of the Pathways Initiative, working with the California Public Utilities Commission and all the other stakeholders to make sure that we are compliant with that bill and that we are providing that reporting that Kathleen mentioned, as well as taking the necessary steps with our board to run through their obligations to kind of ensure that the regional organization governance documents are aligned with the components of the bill. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So thank you again for the time. I hope I didn't go too long. Happy to answer questions.
No, thank you, Ms. Crowley, and thanks for, being patient with the delays. Yes, questions. Okay, Mr. Cruz Negron.
Thank you. What is hybrid generation? I guess that I'm not familiar with that term.
Oh, yes, thank you. Hybrid is a situation where you might have both a storage resource and a solar resource, for example, or a natural gas resource, and you put them together and they actually have one resource ID. We have something called co-located version, which is a storage unit and a solar unit, for example. They have 2 resource IDs, but that is a type essentially acting as one.
Thank you. I have a couple of additional questions. When you said that storage started?
Oh, yes, we began to see small storage units come on, or it might have been 2015, around there, but we were seeing, 50 megawatts, 100 megawatts grow. And so it's been about 10 years that some elements of storage have been on the system.
And I was wondering, because probably I'm a old guard, but I thought that in 1969, we have a storage in California with the Thermalito pump power station. Isn't
yes,
that
yeah, you're right. There are different types of storage. This was the battery storage. That's
okay.
Sorry, I should have been more clear. Yep.
I that's what I imagine. And when you talk about this transmission line, SWIP, I guess, is the one that going from Ely to Midpoint. Is that going to add benefits also to the small rural co-ops in the area, like White Pine and Wells Rural, or is only beneficial for NV Energy? You know?
Yeah, I can guess. I think it's providing reliability, I guess, benefits for the whole interconnection. So depending on your resource provider, it is essentially an interconnected system. And so there are likely benefits across the West.
Yes.
NV Energy has a ownership over part of that line, and other ownership will include Idaho Power and the California ISO. So however you get your energy, there might be some benefits there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the task force? Okay. Ms. Crowley, thank you so much. And we will look forward to hearing further updates. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate being invited.
Yep, always. Okay, and then finally, we have Southwest Power Pool providing an update from Jim Gonzalez, who is the Senior Director for Seams and Western Services. So I will pass it on to you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Happy to be here this afternoon and give a brief update of everything that's been going on at SPP since the last time we came. I think we came maybe in June of last year. All right, let's go to the next slide. So just a reminder who SPP is. We're a 501c6 nonprofit, regional transmission organization, right there in the middle of the map. In the, I don't know, I think that's a reddish color, but you know, and with that, you know, one of the 9 regional grid operators in North America. We perform all of the various services associated with an RTO. Let's go to the next slide. So with that, you'll see our major services for the RTO includes things like reliability coordination, balancing authority, market operations, transmission planning, transmission service, tariff administration. We're also really proud of our training and some of the facilitation services we provide. That's something that, you know, all of the RTOs, ISOs tend to provide training of some kind, but that's something we've really invested a lot of time and effort into. And our approach, it's been this way from the beginning, has been to approach things regionally independent, cost-effective, and reliability focused. Let's go to the next slide. So we also have a wide variety of Western activities in the Western Interconnection, kind of the 2 largest near the tops, the RTO expansion. The RTO is expanding into the Western Interconnection. That's an ongoing project. I'll update on that later in the deck, as well as Markets Plus, the new real-time day-ahead market that's been in development with Western parties out west. We currently have an imbalance energy service market, the WISE, in the Colorado-Wyoming region. The majority of those participants are actually moving into the RTO as part of the RTO expansion project. We're also involved in reliability coordination services, as well as some of the regional programs, the Western Interconnection Unscheduled Flow Mitigation Plan, as well as the program operator for RAP. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to go through just a handful of high-level updates for the major initiatives ongoing. So we'll start with the RTO expansion. So this has been a work in progress for a while. You know, this really began late in 2020, and we've really been marching forward this integration continuously that entire time. Let's go to the next slide. You know, as we work on both the policy, the negotiated terms and agreements for expanding the RTO, we've also been implementing the necessary software changes, process and procedure changes to actually bring a portion of the Western Interconnection into the SPP RTO, including things like optimization of a portion of the back-to-back DC ties connecting the interconnection together. Once the RTO expands in April of next year, the flow on those facilities will be driven by the market optimization, as opposed to bilateral trading. So as you can see, April 1st, 2026 is fastly approaching, really exciting. Earlier this month, we actually began some of our structured and unstructured testing with our new participants from out west. So that was really exciting to move into that phase of the program where kind of moved past all of the policy work, procedural work, and the governing documents, and are actually starting to exercise the software changes and for both SPP and the new participants. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so then I also want to give a Markets Plus update. It's been a busy year for Markets Plus as well. So at the beginning of the year, FERC approved the Markets Plus tariff early in January. There were a handful of clarifying edits that were subsequently approved by FERC in April. In addition to that, you know, now that there's an approved tariff, it's time to start building software systems, processes, and procedures to actually make Markets Plus a reality. Earlier this year in April, FERC also approved our funding agreements and the mechanisms for SPP to go into debt as an RTO in order to build Markets Plus. And then that implementation effort started in earnest right at the turn of June to July, right at the beginning of July. So we are formally in the implementation effort. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see what that means. So this is a very high level overview of the implementation project as we move from taking the tariff approved policies, building out the business practices, markets plus protocols, and actually working with stakeholders to build software, processes, and procedures necessary to launch the market. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of activity with both SPP and the stakeholders that are choosing to join Markets Plus. And we're targeting a go live date of October 1st, 2027. All right, let's go to the next slide. So I also wanted to provide some updates on the RTO in general. Quite a bit of excitement happening in the RTO proper, especially as the RTO is expanding west. I thought this would be interesting for the audience. So one of the areas that SPP and the stakeholders in the RTO have really spent a lot of time focusing is how to prepare the RTO to respond to the large load challenge or opportunity, depending on who you're talking to. There's a large amount of large loads expected to interconnect across North America. And the stakeholders wanted to ensure that as we looked at the RTO policies, that we made sure that we made as smooth a process as possible to whereas investors, companies are looking to interconnect the large loads, that the rules of the RTO wouldn't be what's preventing them from looking at the SPP footprint. So, one of the things we did is this was a really rapid focused effort with some stakeholders in the RTO as well as SPP to really try to find a way to create the fastest connection study in the US for large loads, to try to bring cost certainty to the equation and really try to allow for economic development, large load growth to be enabled in the footprint. So let's go to the next slide. And this is a really high level. There's a lot more detail that goes into this, but one of the things that this group came up with is 3 amazing acronyms: HILS, CHILS, and PAL. What these are is really 3 different paths for large loads to be able to interconnect quickly to the transmission system. They're in various stages of stakeholder approval. The way SPP, the RTO membership, wanted to work through this is really start with HIL, these long-term firm a flavor of long-term firm transmission service for large loads when there is sufficient generation on the system today. Kind of the firmest of firm where there's ample capacity in order to serve that load 24/7, 365. But there's also some additional paths for load that don't have those requirements. And one of those would be CHIL, so our conditional HIL. And what that would be is really for the large loads that are willing to take more of a long-term curtailable transmission service with a commitment to firm over time, really allowing them to interconnect, recognizing that there may be some periods throughout the year where they would be curtailed in order to support reliability. That does is it really allows them to jump forward and interconnect as soon as possible while they wait for the ability to firm that up fully. And then that's really pending stakeholder approval. We expect that to be approved in the near future. And then this last model is what we're calling PAL, which is our price adaptive load. And what this would be is this is really something that's available to any load, not just the large loads, but it's a model that really allows them to be fully price sensitive, not just in the day market, but forward into real time. Little different than your traditional DR models where you're talking about demand response, but fully price participating load all the way through real time. That's still in the design phase. It's something we're really excited about. So I added a link here. There's a lot more to the efforts the RTO is taking towards integrating large loads as quickly and as reliably as possible that can be found at that link. All right, let's go to the next slide. So another RTO update, and this is something we're really proud about, is the GI backlog is cleared. across the industry, the one thing pretty much everyone has in common is their GI process has backlog. So earlier this month, we actually reached a milestone where we cleared our backlog. SPP began working with our stakeholders about 3 years ago, recognizing that as the grid was continuing to change, our queue continued to fall farther behind, and the active queue continued to receive additional requests to interconnect, that we had to make a change. We needed to catch up and we needed to make a change because what we had just was not sustainable. So the stakeholders and SPP worked on a plan, an aggressive plan to really tactically try to close out the backlog as quickly as possible so we could work on enhancements to make it better going forward. Over the last 3 years, performed 24 cluster studies, signed 190 new GIAs for over 30 gigawatts currently under contract. We expect an additional 20 gigawatts under contract within the next 12 months. And we're able to make some changes to where ongoing, now that the backlog has been cleared, we should expect around a 12-month average study timeline going forward. And we've got some enhancements that we expect over the next few years that should shrink that average study timeline down to 6 or 7 months. So this is something we're really, really proud of, really excited about, is being able to clear that backlog. Let's go to the next slide. And then the final update I want to describe is something really interesting on the RTO side that we're calling the consolidated planning process. Let's go one more slide. So a few years ago, we had a team. Again, we love acronyms at SPP. We had the SCRIPT team, which was our Strategic and Creative Reengineering of Integrated Planning team. And they were tasked with really looking at the RTO planning processes and really just trying to forget about how things have always been done in the industry and figure out a way to make everything better. We wanted to try to find ways to consolidate the various planning processes that tend to operate separately and siloed from each other, and really try to figure out ways to tie them closer together, make them more intimately dependent on each other. We thought that looking at it together would improve just the services SPP is providing to the RTO membership, as well as increase responsiveness. And then ultimately, by looking at all of the planning processes closer together, we'd probably optimize the network for better decision-making as we're making these long-term plans. Some key goals is we wanted to really reduce the queue dependence in planning, enhance equity and cost-sharing practices, and really facilitate improved service product quality and transmission decision-making. So this team worked tirelessly for a few years. And if we go to the next slide, they really landed on what we're calling the consolidated planning process. This is a really high-level slide. Again, I provided a link that goes into much more detail, but as a non-planner, the way I think about it is it takes all of those siloed, isolated planning processes and just smashes them together into one single process, kind of one process to rule them all, if you will. What that'll allow is what we're expecting is faster resource integration, faster speed to interconnect new load. We expect better sharing of costs based on holistic benefits, where current processes, each of these planning processes is really assessed independently, and the costs associated with those are distributed based on those siloed processes. So here, by kind of smashing them all together, and we think we're going to get a more efficient solution, more reliable solution. And then when we're looking at actually allocating costs, it can really be benefit-based for the holistic benefits across all of the different planning processes. So this is really exciting. It's something that was recently approved by our board. We're working on filing with FERC, and it's something that FERC's frankly been pretty excited about. So that is my last slide. Well, there's one more slide, my contact slide, but it's just a picture of my face, so we shouldn't dwell on that very long. But I'd be happy to take any questions. I know that was a quick update. been busy, and there's a lot more detail if anyone's interested. You can find at those links.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Gonzalez. And I do love a Lord of the Rings reference. Well done. Does any member of the task force have any questions for Mr. Gonzalez? Okay. I do have one question just as sort of a point of curiosity. With the passage of the bill that we discussed earlier from California, I know it's really recent, but just wondering how SPP is looking at that and what impact that might have on any of the planning that you've just covered.
That's a good question. I was fortunate I was able to be on for most of the call, and I found the previous presentations pretty informative for me. There's a lot of moving pieces there, a lot of new things that, frankly, I'm not an expert on with the Pathways Initiative. But when I look at some of the intent to create independence governance, I think about, at SPP, really from the beginning of our experience out west, whether that was with the Western energy leaders that ultimately resulted in Markets Plus, or even the RTO expansion, we've been really consistent in championing the principles of fully independent governance. We find it, from our experience, it's been essential to design and administration of a successful market. Throughout the process, we've really voiced that we believe that all Western utilities deserve the opportunity to make some informed decisions about market structures and governance, and having the ability to actually influence those decisions. And that's what you get with the independent governance. Now, that's something, when I think about it, SPP, we've had decades of experience administering regional multi-state governance, delivering energy solutions across diverse jurisdictions. And that's something that's been a constant throughout, not just the RTO, but these different contract services. So, when I think about it, it's really important. It's kind of what SPP has been since the beginning, is it's built on a foundation of independence governance. So, we find that to be critical to some of these big decisions.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the other question I would have for you, because this has been sort of a point of discussion across other RTOs, were there, like, maybe if you were going to pick a couple of key elements of the really great work you did to clear up your interconnection queues, what do you think would be the couple of primary design points that you would think would be critical for an RTO to have in place to make sure you keep those queues flowing?
So that's a great question. And I'm not the queue expert at SPP. I'll say one of the things we did to clear the backlog is we worked with stakeholders and customers to try to figure out ways to limit reruns. That's one of the big issues you see in these large queues, especially at the RTOs. You get a whole cluster of applicants. And then as they move through the process and start to get a little price certainty, it kind of changes the equation. You have a handful back out. Well, so many back out that you kind of need to rerun the whole thing again because it's not really comparable. So I know that was one of the things we worked to clear the backlog, was working with the stakeholders to make it a little more rigid in order to ensure that we could get these clusters studied, approved, execute contracts, and just move forward. Moving forward, that's one of the main benefits. One of the main benefits of our new consolidated planning process is really trying to combine all of those together to where they're quicker, there's less reruns, and there's more price certainty for developers, to where they can make better decisions and make informed decisions quicker in the process. A lot more information if you follow some of those links, though.
Great. Now, I appreciate you providing those links for folks who want to look at more of the detail for the work that you guys have done. Any other questions from anybody on the task force for Mr. Gonzalez? Okay. Mr. Gonzalez, thank you so much for hanging in with us.
Yep,
I know it's
thanks.
late back there where you are, so appreciate your time and look forward to continuing to hear about advancements in the markets with Southwest Power Pool. So have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay, next item is public comment. Antonia, do we have anyone wishing to make public comment, or just since it's been a minute since we've done this virtually, how do we want to see if there's anyone wishing to make public comment? Or I can just say, if you'd like to make public comment and you are actually in the Teams meeting, please raise your hand. And if you are on the phone, unmute and just let us know you wanted to make public comment. Okay, seeing none, we can close public comment and we can move to adjournment if there is anyone who would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, Leslie Mujica, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Mojica. Any seconds?
Luis Cruz Negron, I second the motion.
Thank you so much. And then I guess we'll just take a vote by show of hands from the task force members for adjournment, so we can just take the roll on that. Okay, and while that's coming up, thank you, members of the task force, so much for all of your time. Look forward to keeping you updated on our November meeting, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.